Hello and welcome to another video. Today we're going to be talking about the bilirubin pathway and bilirubin metabolism. Okay, this is crucial to the normal physiological functioning of our bodies and as well as what are the pathologies that it can occur. So it's very simple and straightforward, and I'll make it clear and easier to understand, but if you know what's happening at each stage, then you will be able to work out what is being obstructed and what is not, and what is causing the buildup of what, and why it might cause jaundice, okay? So made simple and clinically relevant. So when it comes to the bilirubin pathway, red blood cells break down to make heme and protoporphyrin, right? Then that heme can be metabolized by heme oxygenase, but just remember it's converted to biliverdin, which is then converted to bilirubin. And bilirubin is the star player, okay? So bilirubin is what's going to be then transferred around the body. Now, you need to understand which organs do what for the bilirubin metabolism and how they do it and just what's happening in each organ. We'll make it really simple, the spleen. Okay, the spleen is where all these RBCs go. Even the old RBCs that are broken down, okay, they're broken down by the reticuloendothelial system. Sounds complicated, but stay with me. Reticuloendothelial system. All the RES is a network of connective tissue containing the appropriate active macrophages to then go and phagocytose those RBCs. I'll say it again. Reticuloendothelial system, RES, has just a couple of key active cells which help break down RBCs. So here you can see our macrophage breaking down the RBC, and it's only to the RBCs that need to be broken down, the old ones and the ones that might not be as as flexible anymore. Their quality of physical or structural functioning is compromised. Now, liver. What does the liver do? The liver is responsible for conjugating. What does conjugate mean? Conjugate means to make something more polar. Why would you want to make something more polar? Because polar and polar attract. Polar molecules like water, and you might want to make something water soluble. So conjugation is the liver's job, and all it does is it makes it water soluble. It makes the bilirubin water soluble by making it more polar. What about the gallbladder? People forget about the gallbladder, but this is responsible for storing the bile. And remember in my other video, I talked about how there are alkaline phosphatase and important enzymes that can be found here. That's different. Now, what about the intestines? The intestines are responsible for having your normal flora. The intestinal flora is then going to help convert that bilirubin into urobilinogen, which is then necessary for excretion of the bilirubin. So intestinal flora, the bacteria are helping you to get the bilirubin into the form that can easily pass out of your body. Okay, let's continue. So now you know what the different bodies and different organ systems of the body do. What is the actual pathway? Let's get into it. The reticuloendothelial system, as I discussed, with those activated macrophages, can then help break down the RBCs into heme, which then gets converted to unconjugated bilirubin. Now you need to understand unconjugated, meaning water insoluble. I promise, if you understand this, all of it will become simple and you will understand bilirubin so easily. Unconjugated bilirubin is when it's unsoluble. Okay, just think of it like that. Unconjugated bilirubin, unsoluble, meaning it does not dissolve easily or in water or does not, so unsoluble or insoluble. It's water insoluble, okay? Concept 1. If you understand that concept, move on to the level 2. unconjugated bilirubin, it was water insoluble. Something's water insoluble, it cannot pass easily through our blood plasma because our blood plasma is water. Okay, stick with me here. It binds to albumin, and albumin, think of albumin like Big Al the car. Think of it as a vehicle or as a car that's transporting that bilirubin across the bloodstream. You need it because that unconjugated bilirubin is water insoluble. It's having a hard time. Albumin is going to then be the car, be the vehicle, the Uber. It's going to be the Uber for unconjugated bilirubin. And that will then allow for albumin to take unconjugated bilirubin to the liver. Before that, one more important concept for you clinicians out there, for your students out there who want to be able to diagnose your patient when they then present with a pathology. So when it's water insoluble, that is the same thing as fat soluble. So it is fat soluble. And if it's fat soluble, do you know what part of the body allows fats to pass through? You guessed it, blood-brain barrier. Blood-brain barrier. Tell me, is that dangerous or is it fine? That is dangerous. That is so dangerous because you can then get something called kernicterus. Kernicterus is when elevated levels of bilirubin, classically present in the infant or the baby, present in babies, gets that elevated unconjugated bilirubin, passes the blood-brain barrier and causes altered mental functioning. It literally affects the metabolism of neuronal metabolism, okay? Was the treatment phototherapy, UV light, which will then make that previously insoluble, I keep saying it, water insoluble, make it water soluble so it stops, just all aggregating into the blood-brain barrier. Okay, hopefully you've stuck with me up till now. It's not that difficult if you understand that, hey, it's water insoluble, it needs a car, it's transported in the bloodstream some way, albumin. Big Al is going to transport it in the bloodstream. Think of it like a car or a vehicle. It needs to get the unconjugated bilirubin to the liver. Remember at the start of the video, I told you that the liver is responsible for conjugating, for making that unconjugated bilirubin conjugated bilirubin. And how does it do that? With the help of UGP glucuronosal transferase. Okay, this is an enzyme that will help with conjugation. I'm going to say it again, just repeat with me, UGP glucuronosal transferase. I know this was a difficult topic to understand at first, but if you say the enzyme name enough times, it will make sense. Or UGT, stick with UGT. It's UGP glucuronosal transferase, or I've also read uridine glucuronyl transferase. UGT is fine. Now, here's where our underlying pathologies come in. If you have a deficiency in UGT, some kind of genetic condition where you then have a deficiency in this enzyme, you are no longer able to conjugate that bilirubin. And if you can't conjugate that bilirubin, what you're going to get is a buildup here. Buildup in unconjugated bilirubin and jaundice. Remember, I don't think I've said this yet, but whenever there are elevated levels of bilirubin, it will deposit sublingually first, then in the sclera of the eye, then in the skin. That deposition of bilirubin into these areas of the body, giving that yellowish discoloration, is jaundice. So, high levels of bilirubin depositing into the body, in areas of the body, too much and giving that yellowish discoloration is jaundice. Hyperbilirubinemia is more than 1.6 milligrams, okay? Jaundice occurs when it's more than 2.5. So, there is a window period where your patient might not be presenting with jaundice, but does have elevated bilirubin, so hyperbilirubinemia. So hyperbilirubinemia is more than 1.6. Jaundice is more than 2.5. That's your crucial number, important number to remember, more than 2.5. Then it will deposit into the skin. It will deposit first sublingually, then in the sclera, then in the skin. Okay. Now, if you have a deficiency in UGT, that is known as either Gilbert syndrome or Crigler-Najjar syndrome. Okay. Gilbert syndrome is the nicer version, and Crigler-Najjar is the horrible, like, villain version. Gilbert syndrome, you still have some of this stuff. You still have some of the UGT. Crigler-Najjar, nope, nothing. You have no UGT. It's completely absent. That means that this Crigler-Najjar is fatal, okay? It's lethal. Gilbert syndrome, patients can still survive. Gilbert syndrome, it's something, this is known as when you have kind of like stress jaundice. That means that the jaundice appears in times of stress, like too much physical exercise or stress, then they have jaundice. Otherwise, they are dandy, okay? They're fine. One more thing. So we said that a deficiency in UGT can then cause a buildup. So this will be prevented from forming. You will have a buildup in unconjugated bilirubin. That's known as unconjugated hyperbilirubinemia. Unconjugated hyperbilirubinemia. If you have physiological jaundice of the newborn, in that you have transiently low levels of UGT. In physiological jaundice, physiological means normal. It's not pathological, it's physiological. In that kind of jaundice of the newborn, physiological, you just have transiently low levels of UGT. It kind of fixes. It presents after the first 48 hours, the first 24 hours, but then it resolves. Now, another way, when you get unconjugated...
It's 19 hours.
Sorry. When you get a lot of hemoglobin, RBC destruction, such as in hemolysis, such as in extravascular, such as in just too much hemolysis, extravascular hemolysis, okay, then you will have elevated unconjugated hyperbilirubinemia. Simply because you're producing so much, basically, let's say the liver can conjugate 50 bilirubin at a time. If you are then producing, so then our body will produce 50 and it will be able to conjugate and it'll be fine. If you have too much hemolysis, extravascular hemolysis, you're producing like 100 or 150 bilirubin. And let's say only 50 of that 150 is being conjugated by the liver. Now you have an excess of 100. Where's that going to go? It's going to present as jaundice, okay? So extravascular hemolysis, too much hemolysis, physiological jaundice of the newborn, Gilbert and Crigler-Najjar syndrome. All of these pathologies are going to block it here. I want you to think of a big arrow, big cross here, and that's going to result in elevated. So elevated hyperbilirubinemia, unconjugated. After the liver, you want that conjugated bilirubin to get into your intestine. So what happens in the gut? In the gut, you have your normal intestinal flora. These are the normal bacteria present in your gut, which are then going to help that conjugated bilirubin turn into urobilinogen. Urobilinogen. What's the point of converting it into urobilinogen? Remember, whenever something ends in inogen, that means it's a precursor to something else. And urobilinogen is in fact a precursor to urobilin, which is what makes up which is the excretory form of bilirubin in the urine, and then stercobilin. Sterco starts with ster, just like stool, and stercobilin is what gives that, it's excreted in the stool. It sounds like a pirate saying stool, stirka, stir, I stir, okay, I'm not going to try. and this forms stool, right? And that's what gives the characteristic stool color. Now, one important concept for you to understand is that when you have the kidney and the glomerulus and you have the kidney tubules, they are also lined with fat, okay? So, when they are lined with fat, the water-soluble conjugated bilirubin can pass straight through. Fair enough, it can. But when it is, fats allow for fat-soluble substances to then be reabsorbed, and then that allows for regulation. Okay, you know homeostasis, that's what allows for regulation of bilirubin. Okay, now it allows for the passage. Remember, unconjugated bilirubin was water insoluble, meaning it was fat soluble, meaning if you have too much unconjugated bilirubin being excreted, you can literally just reabsorb it. Yeah, you can't do that with the conjugated bilirubin, which is water soluble, because fat and water does not mix. Okay, so this means conjugated bilirubin will straight up just be excreted because it cannot be reabsorbed. And if it's straight up excreted, that means that initially when you have that can give a dark color to the urine, okay? Remember stercobilin? Okay, I'm going to give you a quick summary. Okay, I'm going to stop here and I'll follow up in part 2. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe.